Dianne Holechek, Chuck Norris's first wife, passes away at the age of 84, honoring the woman who created the legend. When word leaked out that Dianne Holechek, the first wife of Hollywood legend and martial arts icon Chuck Norris, had died at the age of 84, it signaled the end of a chapter that many fans hardly knew, but that was crucial in forming one of the most famous people in America. While Chuck Norris gained international recognition for his power, self-control, and extravagant demeanor, Dianne's life took place primarily behind the scenes and was characterized by fortitude, selflessness, and quiet influence rather than notoriety. The death of a woman who was once married to a famous person is not the only aspect of this narrative. It tells the narrative of a life lived in a period of change, love built before fame, the unseen emotional labor that goes into public success, and how history frequently ignores the people who stood at the start of a legend's journey. As this story draws to a close, Dianne Holechek's departure prompts a more subdued, in-depth contemplation that transcends public recognition, celebrity, and headlines. Her death at the age of 85 signifies the end of a life spent mostly out of the public eye, but intimately linked to one of Hollywood's most well-known figures. This chapter serves as a reminder that every public personality has a personal history defined by love, sacrifice, and shared beginnings. Even though Chuck Norris is widely recognized as an action icon, a martial arts legend, and a symbol of strength, a key figure in that history was Dianne Holechek. Before the fame, the cameras, and the worldwide recognition, Dianne was there. She was standing next to a young man who was ambitious but not yet well known. Years of development, uncertainty, and dedication that helped lay the groundwork for a future star were reflected by their marriage. The importance of those early years cannot be obliterated, even though their paths later diverged. Relationships that start before achievement frequently have a different weight because they are based on common struggle, hope, and trust, rather than reputation or legacy. Dianne's life is a subdued reminder that not all significant lives are lived in public in a society where visibility is frequently used to gauge worth. She didn't look to fame for approval or attention. Rather, she opted for personal dignity, family, and solitude. She stayed mostly out of the spotlight even after her marriage ended, letting her life be defined by her own choices rather than by affiliation or fame. Just that decision reveals a lot about her personality. Her passing gives an era, as much as a life, a feeling of closure. It brings an end to a chapter that started long before Chuck Norris gained widespread recognition. It serves as a reminder that time passes for everyone, regardless of notoriety or legacy. Relationships change, youth fades, and all stories finally come to an end. Sadness and a silent truth that binds us all are present in that reality. Her demise is definitely personal to Chuck Norris. Shared history persists even after divorce. There are still memories of the good times, the bad, the youth, and the love. There is a certain emotional burden associated with losing someone who was a part of your early adult life. It is remembering who you two were at the beginning, rather than just lamenting who they were at the end. This type of loss is complex, introspective, and very human. Dianne was more than just a famous name to their kids. In ways that the general public never noticed, she was a mother. Her contributions to their lives, her leadership, and her selflessness were far more significant than any public acclaim. Regardless of age, losing a parent causes an indescribable void. It is the absence of a voice that used to provide consolation, guidance, and unwavering support. It is the end of a chapter that will never be replaced. The tale of Dianne Holechek also illustrates the frequently overlooked price of achievement and ambition. Relationships that withstood stress, distance, and change are often the source of legendary professions. Some make it through while others do not. They are not failures because of this. They become human as a result. Dianne's story serves as a reminder that although love stories don't always end the way they start, they are still important. They still have an impact on people's lives, futures, and enduring memories. Her dying prompts us to consider how we define legacy. Not all legacies are created by accolades, box office receipts, or popular acclaim. It can occasionally be found in the quiet strength of choosing seclusion, starting a family, and leading a dignified life away from the spotlight. The people Dianne loved, the years she spent with them, and the dignity with which she lived her life are all part of her legacy. Instead of spectacle, readers are left with a sense of respect. Exaggerated storylines and dramatic conclusions are not necessary. That's not what her life requires. Rather, it requests recognition, empathy, and comprehension. It challenges us to keep in mind that everyone associated with celebrity is still a unique person with their own journey, joys, setbacks, and purpose. Dianne Holechek's death is ultimately more than a minor detail in someone else's narrative. It's her own conclusion. A life that started long before everyone was looking and went on long after the spotlight shifted. A calm, secluded, and purposeful life. As this chapter comes to an end, it serves as a gentle reminder that there are people who, frequently without being acknowledged, shaped every mythology. Even though their stories don't make the news, they should be remembered. Because Dianne Holechek lived, loved, and left her mark in ways that only those closest to her will ever fully comprehend, her life mattered, not because of who she was married to. I hope she is remembered with honor. May serenity come to her family, and may her story serve as a reminder that even the quietest lives can have profound significance, enduring influence, and unquestionable value. Early years, a contemporary woman. Dianne K. Holechek was born into a generation that was influenced by strong family values, tradition, and simplicity. Her upbringing in America around the middle of the 20th century mirrored a time when young women were frequently urged to put stability, family, and support ahead of their own aspirations. Later on, friends and relatives would characterize her as kind, calm, and quietly determined, someone who placed a high value on commitment and devotion. She didn't grow up with aspirations of Hollywood glitz or celebrity. Rather, Dianne's early years were focused on her home, relationships, and creating a meaningful future with a loved one. A young guy with aspirations far beyond what either of them could have imagined at the time would soon become entwined with that future. Getting to know Chuck Norris, love before the spotlight. Long before Carlos Ray, Chuck Norris became a worldwide celebrity. Dianne got to know him. Chuck was a disciplined, aspirational young man with a strong sense of purpose and a developing enthusiasm for martial arts at the time, not a movie star or cultural phenomenon. Their shared aspirations, youth, and optimism were the foundation of their partnership. Long before fame, wealth, and public recognition entered their lives, they were married while Chuck was still figuring things out. At a time when the future was unpredictable and success was uncertain, Dianne married him. Those were hardly glamorous early years. They had to deal with the emotional strain of pursuing an unusual desire, rigorous training sessions, and financial difficulty. Dianne, however, stood with him, providing emotional support as he pursued professional and physical discipline, sacrifice, and matrimony. The responsibilities on their marriage increased along with Chuck's commitment to martial arts. The training regimens were rigorous, traveling increased in frequency. A persistent worry was financial instability. While her husband concentrated on creating what would eventually become a historic career, Dianne handled a large portion of the household duties during this time. Dianne devotedly embraced motherhood after the couple welcomed 2 kids. Dianne's world focused on raising their kids, running a family, and maintaining a feeling of normalcy in the face of uncertainty, while Chuck's profession gradually gathered speed. Her sacrifices were unnoticed. Her contribution was not highlighted in any interviews or magazine covers. However, Chuck Norris's ascent would have looked very different in the absence of her steadiness throughout those formative years. Living in the shadow of growing notoriety, the dynamics of their marriage changed as Chuck Norris moved from martial arts, competitions to teaching, and then acting. Opportunity came with fame, but so did distance. Their relationship started to suffer due to public scrutiny, work obligations, and a widening gap between private and public life. This was an emotionally complicated time for Dianne, as she discreetly dealt with the loneliness and strain that frequently accompany being married to someone whose life is becoming more and more public. She saw her husband's success. She was rarely in the spotlight, and when she was, it frequently ignored her uniqueness and reduced her identity to a footnote. A chapter that had included Chuck Norris's most formative years came to an end when their marriage ended in divorce. Even while the split was very personal, it represented a reality that many couples encounter when their lives diverge due to ambition, celebrity, and personal development. Choosing privacy over publicity in life after divorce. After her marriage ended, Dianne Holechek opted for privacy, a decision that few celebrities make. She didn't look for public approval, media attention, or candid interviews. Rather, she completely distanced herself from the public narrative. After the divorce, she prioritized quiet independence, family, and personal tranquility. She was regarded by friends as elegant, grounded, and disinterested in going back in time for pity or attention. She cherished her duty as a mother above all else and maintained a close bond with her kids. Dianne's silence spoke volumes at a time when public personalities frequently profit from their personal histories. It demonstrated self-respect, emotional development, and a need to be recognized as herself rather than as Chuck Norris's ex-wife. Living quietly and aging gracefully, Dianne lived far away from the news as the years went by. Dianne stayed grounded in ordinary life as Chuck Norris continued to develop into a pop culture phenomenon, starring in films, TV shows, and becoming an internet legend. She matured gracefully and wisely, according to many who knew her later in life. Relationships with family, modest pleasures, and introspection brought her contentment. Her attitude was one of acceptance of a life that had taken unforeseen turns, rather than resentment. Although she hardly discussed it, she carried the history of an extraordinary period of American popular culture within her. Rather, she opted for tranquility over fame, recollection over legend. Her 84th death, a silent farewell. There was no pomp or media frenzy surrounding Dianne Holechek's death at the age of 84. Like the life she had chosen, it was quiet. However, her passing has a profound impact on people who are aware of the hidden narratives that underlie public achievement. She was a woman who marked the start of a legend's adventure, a partner in a conflict, a mother in an uncertain time, a private person in a public time. A chapter that existed long before fame rewrote the story comes to an end. With her passing. Reinterpreting her legacy, the star is frequently remembered by history, but those who stood next to them before the lights came on are frequently forgotten. Dianne Holechek's legacy is characterized by perseverance, selflessness, and quiet strength rather than by red carpets or honors. She stands for many women whose contributions go mostly unnoticed, women who encourage aspirations that are not their own, who provide stability while others pursue ambition, and who embrace change without seeking praise. Her narrative serves as a reminder that every public achievement is the result of a web of personal sacrifices, emotional labor, and private lives that are hardly acknowledged. Conclusion: the story of someone else is more than just a name. Dianne Holechek was not just the first wife of Chuck Norris. She was a woman of her era, a loving mother, a companion during uncertain beginnings, and a person who prioritized dignity over attention. Her calm, resilient, and graceful lifestyle is what makes her life significant, not the person she married. As we commemorate her departure, we also pay tribute to the many untold tales similar to hers, serving as a reminder that not all strength and legacies are evident. The stories that are lived off stage can sometimes have the most impact.